Is God really good? Is God really good? Because if God is not good, doesn't really matter what we do, does it? If God is not good, does it really matter what we do? Because if God is capricious, like the many other gods that were worshipped in the ancient times, we need to go back to sacrificing virgins and volcanoes. Or just forget it and just, roll the dice and hopefully I make it. But our God is good. It's interesting, when I went through the whole process of deconstructing my faith, moving away from what I had originally been raised in, originally taught, this was my foundation point. God is good. I had to use that to build everything else upon it. So oftentimes, I'd say, well, here's what I was taught. I'm sorry, that doesn't line up with God being good. It's just going to have to go. And that was a very difficult process, but a very worthy process. So I quoted from A.W. Tozier last week, we tend by a secret law of the soul to move towards our mental image of God. So if we do not believe that God is good, guess what? We ourselves will not move towards becoming good. And I think we've seen that. Sometimes even within the church, we see people who think that God is angry. And amazingly, they are angry. We see people who have a mental image of God that is vengeful. And amazingly, they become vengeful. So if we start with the mental image that God is not only holy, but that God is good, that is what we should be moving towards. Hannibal LaGrange College 2002 final exam. No, I was not there. This is a story that was told to me. Imagine this. If you're a teacher, you'll be able to identify with this. If you've ever been a student, you'll be able to identify with this. It was final exam. Time for the final exam. Apparently, during final exams, stress levels are a little bit high. The students walk into the class, and the tests are all sitting on their desk, face down. The instructor walks into the class, and he holds up their textbook. And he says, "This is your textbook," just in case you didn't recognize it. You are responsible for everything in it on this test. He sets it down. And of course, this makes everybody just a little anxious. Gage is going a little green now, having flashbacks. And then comes that moment, he goes, "You may start your test." And according to one student who took the test, she says that when she turned the test over, it was already all filled out, including her name. And that every answer had been marked. And she was a little confused. And at the end of the test was a little note. It says, "This test has already been answered. All the questions were filled in by the maker of the test. You get an A, even though you haven't done anything to deserve it." Yeah, one person says, "Nice." I see the teachers in the room going, "What's that all about?" No, that's not working for us, right? That's not working for us. It's like, ooh, nice. But, Hannibal LaGrange College, it's a Christian liberal arts college. It's a seminary. It trains students. And the instructor was trying to communicate God's goodness to the students. That's his final message to them. I want to communicate God's goodness to you. That, whether you're one of those students who is totally prepared and you walked in, or you're one of those students who is completely unprepared, guess what? The end results are going to be good because the maker of the test is good. When we get to heaven, there is no theology exam that we have to pass. There is no doctrinal statement of faith that we must sign on to. When we get to heaven, they're going to open the Lamb's Book of Life, and your name will be there because the giver of life has written your name there. Not because of anything that you've done. Not because you earned a PhD in theology. Not because you've given hundreds of thousands of dollars to the poor. The giver of life has written your name in the book of life because He loves you, and He is good. He's on our side. God is good. In Psalms 119:68 says, "You are good, and what you do is good. Teach me your decrees." You are good, and what you do is good. Doesn't that naturally follow that if the person is good, their actions should be good as well? You don't have a good person who does all kinds of terrible things. There are two different words for this in Psalms. The first, you are good. The Hebrew word is tob, and it means excellent in quality. Excellent in quality. This is your 5-star, I don't even think they go up to 5, what is it? 3-star Michelin food. Till I don't eat there, huh? 3 stars I think they go up to. 3-star Michelin food restaurant where the quality is excellent, right? This is your Wagyu beef. This is your high-end Louis Vuitton wallet that you just purchased and paid way too much for. Okay, excellent quality. And this is what it's saying about God, that God is of excellent quality. He's the best that you can possibly get, that there is none like Him. And then the other word from Psalm 119, and what you do is good, is the word yatab. The word for good in this one is yatab. It means to do good, to deal well with, to do it well and to do it thoroughly, to make a thing good or right or beautiful. So that here we have excellent quality within God, and what He does, He makes things good, and He makes things right, and He makes things beautiful, and He does it very well, and He does it very thoroughly, which is an amazing thing that we can think about, because right now, within each one of us, God is working, and He will do it well, and He will do it thoroughly, and He's going to turn things right, and He's going to turn things beautiful. I think about the old song, right? Something beautiful, something good. You guys remember that song? No, sorry. It's an old hymn from the church, pagan. Something beautiful, something good. All my confusion He understood. When all I had to offer Him was heartache and strife, He made something beautiful of my life. It's an old worship chorus from the 70s. Oh, where were you guys in those hippie days when we were singing that stuff? You know, hanging out at the beach with our long hair and love beads, strumming with a guitar, singing that stuff. Where were you people? Yeah, never mind. Yeah. God's nature, His excellence, His goodness causes Him to be kind, to be cordial and benevolent to all of humankind. I really want you to stress that word, all of humankind. Because if there's any one place that we as human beings, that we as Christians, we who proclaim to follow Him fail, is this idea of all. See, we tend to say, well, there are the deserving and the undeserving. There's us, and there's all these nasty people over here. And we forget that we are to mirror God, to live out the image of God within us, and to be good and kind and cordial to all human beings. Because every human being is made in the image of God and is a bearer of that image. And to mistreat that human being is to mistreat Christ Himself. That is what He taught. Whatever you have done for the least of these, you have done it unto me. And whatever you fail to do to the least of these, you fail to do for me. God shows us, I am benevolent towards all of humankind. That's not a message that we oftentimes hear within the church. Sometimes we hear the message that God is angry at, and you'll see a whole list of it sometimes, right? You guys have seen them on the street corner standing with their signs, their whole great big list of all the people God is mad at. But instead, God is kind and cordial, benevolent. He's working within everyone, even the person holding the sign. He's working in their life to make it right, to make it good, to make it beautiful. God's nature of goodness causes Him to act righteously. Because of who He is, what He does naturally flows from that. Here's a little quote from James third chapter, verses 11 to 13. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? Of course not. My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. And the point that James is making is that everything acts according to its nature. God, who is good, simply cannot do something that is evil. It's impossible. God, who is good, cannot do something that is unkind. God, who is good, cannot do something that is unrighteous. And this was very important for me as I began to rebuild my faith upon this foundation of God being good. Because as I would go through some of the teachings that I had been raised with, I'd have to compare it to, well, is this a good, benevolent, kind, loving act towards all of humankind? No, it's not. So this must not be of God. And it had to go. That became my standard for everything I had been taught. I would look at a teaching or a doctrine and say, well, does this lead to us acting righteously? Does this lead to us acting out the goodness of God towards all human beings? No, it doesn't. So it's got to go. I tell you, by the time I got done cutting away a lot of my Fundagelical teachings, there wasn't much left. I'm like, what am I left with? Not much. It was a long and difficult process. God's work is good. We're told in the Genesis story at the very beginning that as he created everything, what did he say? God pronounced it good. God pronounced it good. All the work that he does is good. So if somebody tells you that God did something and it's not good, it wasn't done by God, guess who probably did it? That would be us. We tend to be the ones who do the things that are not good because we fail to reflect who he is. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good, and there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Everything that God has laid his hand to is good. This led to one of my really tough points of deconstructing my faith. Because I was raised a fundamentalist. Anybody else in here that was raised a fundamentalist? Yeah. That's a tough thing because you're told that every word in the Bible is literally true. And you're like, really? Because some of these things in here make God out not to be good. Some of these things in here make God out to be genocidal and psychotic. But guess what? If God is truly good, those stories got to go. They have to be making another point. That was a tough step for me, being raised fundamentalist. God's work is good, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. He created them. This will be a tough one for all those who were raised Calvinist. Do I have Calvinists in the crowd? Okay, for all my Calvinists, we are what? Totally depraved. There's nothing good in us whatsoever. And yet we are made in the image of God. We are good. It's hard to look at some other people sometimes and go, there is good. But yet there is, because they bear the image of God. The best explanation I ever heard of this was somebody said, imagine, if you will, that you've gone into an art museum and you see a beautiful masterpiece there. We'll just pick one at random. It's not possible to get close enough to the Mona Lisa to do this, but we'll just use that one. Okay. Suppose you go into the Louvre and you see the Mona Lisa there, and some mischievous little child has taken his crayon and drawn a mustache on the Mona Lisa. Is the Mona Lisa totally worthless now? No. It's still a masterpiece, even though it's been defaced. And that's what we are as human beings. We are beautiful masterpieces, and yet, through our own actions, we have defaced ourselves. And yet, God is in the restoration business and can restore us back to the beautiful masterpiece that we were and are still. We are still worthwhile. Anybody who goes around telling you that humankind is worthless and terrible and totally depraved and blah, don't listen to them. Because no matter where you're at, no matter how far you've wandered from Christ, no matter how many terrible things you've done in your life, you are still beautiful and valuable and important in the eyes of God. You are still good and you still bear his image. Yeah, there might be some muck and grime obscuring that image, but God is in the business of cleaning that off. and bringing back out the beauty that was there. So how do we live this all out? How do we live out the goodness of God? First off, you need to accept that you are good. That's a hard one for a lot of people to accept. You are good. There are some people who do not like to believe that because they like to punish themselves. They want to harm themselves in some ways. But you are good. God has declared it. You are good. You bear his image. You are good. You are good. Let that soak in. You are good. Understand that you and all of humanity is good. That's the tough one for me. I'm pretty good at, I'm good. I have a little harder time looking at all the rest of humanity sometimes and going, they're good too. What about those awful Muslims? Yeah, they're good. What about all those immigrants coming across our borders? Yeah, they're good. What about this group? They're good. Every human being on the face of this earth is good, created in God's image, bearing God's image. They are good. And we have to learn to seek out that good within them. We must seek that good within them. The poor are good, the addicts are good, the Muslims are good, refugees are good. They're all good. You can't point to any person on the face of this earth and go, yeah, they're not good. Every one of them is a child of God. Some have wandered away from home like the prodigal. But our job is to welcome them back. Our job is to keep calling them home again. Our job is to say, come on back home. God's not mad at you. God is on your side. God is good, and so are you. That's our job. Everyone is good. You are good. Everyone is good. Now, if you grew up, like I said, in the fundamentalists and evangelicals, you were not told that. In fact, we hear it on a regular basis about how bad this country is and how it's falling apart and there's nothing but evil and God is angry at this country and God is punishing this country and God is judging this and God is judging that group over here and judging that group over here because they're so terrible. They're good. Liberals are good. Conservatives are good. Democrats are good. Republicans are good. We may not be able to see past our political ideologies, but we need to learn to look at the person, not the ideology, and see the goodness within them, and to embrace them, and say, yeah, you're still my brother or my sister. We are to act good to all of them. As we carry the image of God, what should be flowing from us are good acts, kind acts, benevolent acts. We should always be seeking to help the other person, to make what is right, to make what is beautiful. When we encounter another person and we look at them, we go, man, that's kind of messed up. Guess what? We need to set that right. We need to make that beautiful because that is what God does, and he does it through us. There's an old song, again, you guys are probably too young for it. Randy Stonehill. Anybody know who Randy Stonehill is? Love Randy Stonehill. One of the original rock and rollers from way back when in the 70s before, you guys were born. In the song, it's called Who Will Save the Children? One of the things that he reminds us is that we are God's hands and we are God's voice and we are the ones who have to make the choice. And that if we Christians don't do it, then who's going to do it? That we, as the church, are the visible presence of Christ in the world today. We are his hands who serve today. So we are to reflect the goodness that we are created in. But I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Bless them that curse me. That's what God does, isn't it? Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be children of your Father. And that phrase means to be just like your Father. As a child mirrors their parents, so we are to mirror God. So that you may be children of your Father which is in heaven. For he makes his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. Aren't you glad we serve a good God? Can you imagine if we served a God who was not good, who just one day decided, I don't particularly like those people over there. No oxygen for them today. I don't like those people over there. No rain for them. I don't like those people over there. No sunshine for them. But yet every day God is good. Every day we have sunshine. Every day we have rain. Every day we have oxygen. Every day we are blessed in some way by God. There's not a person walking this earth that is not receiving blessing from God. He blesses those who are righteous and unrighteous. He blesses those who are good and not good, because he is good. And he doesn't do these things based on them. He does everything based on himself, his own character, who he is. We need to do the same thing. Treat every human as good. We need to do the same thing. We cannot withhold our blessings from anybody because we think they're undeserving. If we have been blessed, we need to bless others. Show love and grace towards all people. Show love and grace towards all people. Why are we so tight-fisted? Why do we withhold? We even withhold kind words from each other. Kind word costs you nothing. Actively work for their best, for their restoration and their healing. What can we do to set this world right? We have to start searching for ways to set this world right. There is great injustice in this world. Great injustice in this world. There is great injustice even in this country. Let me make it perfectly clear. You can criticize the policies and the government of this country and still love it. I love this country, but there are some things going on in it that I don't like. And the great injustice that I see, the great racial injustice I see, disturbs me to the core. The great economic injustices I see disturbs me to the core, because these do not reflect who we are or who we should be. I see a group that yells that they're trying to turn this back into the Christian country which it was founded to be. I'm like going, wouldn't it be nice if you all acted like Christ and worked for the good of people rather than for your own good? We need to start restoring people. We need to start healing people. There are people who live on the street today. Many of them are on the street because they are unregulated on their medications. It is so difficult for many of those people who are schizophrenic and bipolar and other mental disorders. It's hard even with the best social services to keep them regulated on their medication. And they fall off of their medication and they hit the street. We need to do something about that. And instead, we have chosen to withhold medical care from them, to withhold financial resources from them. We demonize them and blame them, and we turn our eyes from them. We need to be concerned about them. There are families living in poverty. Today, after church, many of us are going to go out, and we're going to have lunch, and we're going to have a full belly, and we're going to be happy, and we're going to have a good time, and yet there are children who will be going to bed hungry tonight, who did not have a meal. And we need to do something about that. We need to bring about economic justice. We need to restore their place in this world as the image of God and how good they are. We need to bring about healing for so many. There are many people who have been wounded by the church. And that is one of the reasons that Open Door Ministries exist. Kathy Baldock will be here in a week to talk about restoring the breach, trying to heal those who have been hurt by the church. This is the job that we are called to do, and this is what we must do. We must actively work for it. Brian Fisher. If you haven't read my blog post on him, he's one of the what I call a prophet of hate, because he earns a profit selling hate. Chris McDonald, another prophet of hate, earns a living, earns his paycheck. He's the moron who the other day, oh, I'm sorry, did I say moron? I didn't mean, oh, man. He's the individual the other day who said that God doesn't pander to lawlessness. Apparently he forgot about that whole idea of grace. That God just looks at the lawless and goes, I got healing for you. Come and take it. We are under attack. America was founded as a Christian nation, and they're attacking our Christian values. This disgusts me, the rise of white nationalism in this country today. Today. This shouldn't even exist. It should have been eliminated. You can know the kind of God they serve. The kind of God they serve is not good. The kind of God they serve is angry and hateful. You can choose to serve their God, or you can choose to serve this God. How good is God? He is the God who says, I would rather die and take the pain myself than harm even my most unrighteous, rebellious child. I look at humanity and I know they're messed up, but they are my children, and because I am good, I will take the pain myself. Is that the God you choose to serve? We have to make a choice. With that, we're going to ask the worship team to come back and to sing Good, Good Father, for indeed He is.